Hello all and welcome to our daily news show, The Big Story, where we talk about the hottest topics of today right in the heart of the newsroom. I'm Kimberly Jiao, coming to you live from the Straits Times, and we are streaming on YouTube and Facebook, so do leave us a like, comment and share it with your friends. And if you are watching us on YouTube, do subscribe to our channel. I'll be joined by my newsroom colleagues soon to discuss the topics that got you talking today. Our first story, Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam formally withdrew the contentious extradition bill on Wednesday, September 4th, following months of protests. In her video address to the public, Lam calls for the ceasing of violence in favor of dialogue. Let's have a look.
Our responses to the 5 demands have been made with full consideration of different constraints and circumstances. I recognize that these may not be able to address all the grievances of people in society. However, should we all think deeply whether escalating violence and disturbances is the answer, or whether it is better to sit down to find a way out through dialogue? Many would say that we need a common basis to start such a dialogue, and that this has to start with the Chief Executive. I now present 4 actions to initiate this dialogue. First, the government will formally withdraw the bill in order to fully allay public concerns. The Secretary for Security will move a motion according to the rules of procedure when the Legislative Council resumes.
With us to discuss this development is regional correspondent Elizabeth Law. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
So this video, which we saw earlier, which, by the way, if you'd like to see the full version, is on our YouTube channel. That's the Straits Times on YouTube. But this was uploaded about a day ago, right? So how have things progressed since then?
Well, okay, I think first let's talk a little bit about the video. So, because we saw the bit where she says that, oh, I present 4 actions. Now, we heard the first one, which is to withdraw the bill. That's what everyone else is talking about. So there are these other 3 things that she's doing. One is that she's appointing 2 more members to the commission that is going to be looking into this, into the events. We'll talk a bit more about the commission later, but this is not exactly the commission that people are asking for. The third is that she's going to have a platform for dialogue to talk to various members of society, and the fourth, of course, is the fact that she's getting experts to look into Hong Kong, because she said a line from her video yesterday was that the protests have now moved beyond the extradition bill. It's about greater social issues in Hong Kong. So she's getting experts to look at what, we know what these social issues are. It's housing, it's about businesses, it's about opportunities for people. So she's getting experts to come in and look at how they can resolve these issues. So that's about the video. Now, on to today. Today she had a press conference in the morning, which is actually rare because firstly, having a video release to announce news is rare in Hong Kong. Generally, it comes in the form of a press conference where media can ask questions. So the fact that it was almost half a day, at least 12, 18 hours later that she held a press conference and met the media was significant. But I think, did she answer any questions? It might have raised more questions than she actually answered. She did defend the decision, saying that it was hers to make, that there was no U-turn, but people are wondering, how much of a role has Beijing played in this, and is she doing this because she had green light from them? So what we also mustn't forget is the fact that for months and months, ever since this started in June, at all turns she has refused to use the word withdrawn. She said that the bill has suspended. She said that the bill is dead, using a great Chinese analogy. But she's just refused to use the word suspended. So the fact that she used the word suspended yesterday and suddenly, she thinks that everything is fine. But it really isn't. So it has raised a lot of other questions, of course. And the fact that people are asking for an independent commission to look into the police. I've talked about this here before. An independent commission is similar to a COI, which Singaporeans are very familiar with, where, of course, it's chaired by a former judge and they have the power to call evidence. But what she is suggesting now, or has been pushing to the protesters, to Hong Kong, is the use of something called the Independent Police Complaints Commission.
Right.
Having the word independent there is a slight misnomer because people in the commission are pretty much pro-establishment figures. So they're saying that they won't get a fair assessment of what is going on. That's number one, on whether police had used excessive force in dealing with the protesters and all the events leading up to this. And also, they're saying that this commission does not have the same sort of powers that a committee of inquiry would have, because people would give evidence to this commission based on a voluntary basis. It's not, they can't be summoned to present evidence. So that's where we are today.
I see. So, and you mentioned a little bit about, raising more questions that she answers. And there has been some talk amongst the protesters that, they're not happy with what she's suggested, and some of them are even casting doubt on what her intentions are. So could we talk a little bit about how it's been received?
Yeah, I suppose, many people have said that what happened is too little too late. I suppose an analogy that was going on around Twitter yesterday is, imagine this. You go to a hawker centre, and you see, okay, there are these 5 stalls that I want to eat from. I want chicken rice, I want char kway teow, I want Hokkien mee, I want biryani, and I want Indian rojak. It's like a good mix of everything, but the hawkers are just refusing to sell it to you, and then you get into this massive fight. You're in the hawker center, you're so angry, you're so hungry, and you're like flipping the table and getting into arguments with everyone, just massive arguments. And finally, one of the hawkers goes, okay, you know what, fine, you can have some Hokkien mee, but when the Hokkien mee comes to you, it's 2 hours later, it is cold, and the prawns are rotten. So,
whoa!
I mean, that is
the situation at hand.
That is the situation at hand, because they have 5 demands. She's answered one of them, but months later, after all of this chaos, and it's not exactly what they want.
Right.
It's too late. So, because a phrase that they have used throughout these entire movement has been 5大訴求，缺一不可, which translates to 5 demands, not one less. So even though there are 5 of them, it comes as a package. It's not like you could just say, okay, we'll answer one of them and then we'll be done with it. Obviously, it's not enough. So the immediate response to this was the fact that, of course, people were very upset. And last night we've seen that protesters were gathering in police stations and MTR stations across Hong Kong, shining lasers again, and police had to fire tear gas, and it's the same drill. It's getting a bit tiring. So what would actually help to assuage this anger a little bit? Perhaps the fact that for an independent commission, or maybe something more, because it certainly has evolved. Yeah.
It's definitely bigger than what it had started out with.
Exactly.
So with that in mind, what do you think is next for Hong Kong?
Well, to build on what you said, it's much bigger than what it started out to be. What it started out to be was something against this extradition bill, but obviously it's moved beyond that. It has morphed as well. It has gone from being about about anger at the government to an anger about the bill to now it has created this fissure in society where the people no longer trust the police, and that is a very, very big problem, because if you have a society where your populace is no longer trusting law enforcement, that is a great social issue. So of course she has to find ways to fix that. But before that happens, people obviously are going to continue protesting. We've seen images from this week. Students, even though they're supposed to be going back to school, they've been boycotting classes and forming human chains. We've seen adorable images. I don't know if you have it.
Like a long line of children.
Like a long line of school children in their uniform holding hands, but this boy and girl, because it also gives a sense of how young these protesters are. That boy and girl, because they're afraid to hold hands, so they hold a pen. I mean, the greatest distance in the world, the pen zone. But jokes aside, so what we're looking at now is that firstly, they have to find some way to repair the split and this distrust. And another thing that we're looking at is October 1st, is Red Letter Day.
Okay.
China's 70th National Day. Obviously, they don't want anything dramatic to mar celebrations. I think people keep saying that, oh, could it be that after that there's going to be a military option, they're going to send in the troops. I still think that, no, it does no one any good. But what they could do after that, could they use lawfare, which we've already seen, where they are using various arms of the law and law enforcement to crack down on protesters, possibly.
I see. So at the moment, although she's made these announcements, it doesn't seem just yet that the protests are going to come to a complete halt.
No, I honestly don't think so.
I see. Well, thanks for sharing more with us, Elizabeth. And if you'd like to keep up with Hong Kong politics, do stay tuned to our website. That's www.straitstimes.com. Our next story, the Elections Department said on Wednesday that the Electoral Boundaries Review Committee, or EBRC, was convened last month. This is the first step to the next Singapore general election, which has to be held by April 2021. And with us to discuss this is Deputy Political Editor Royston Sim. Hello. So for those out there who may be a little bit unsure, what exactly does this committee do?
So the committee is basically in charge of reviewing the current electoral boundaries and recommending changes to the GRCs and to the SMCs, taking into account population changes, in the various electoral districts. This time round, it has been tasked with further reducing the average size of GRCs and also increasing the number of SMCs to more than the current 13. In short, basically, it determines the map, of the battleground for the coming GE. The committee is chaired by the Secretary to the Prime Minister, Tan Kee Yong, and usually comprises 5 public servants who have expertise in urban planning and in housing demographics. And past members have included the chief executives of the Singapore Land Authority, the Housing Development Board, the government's chief statistician, and also the head of the elections department.
I see. So now that this committee has sort of been convened, right? What happens next?
So the next step is for the committee to finish its work, and then it will submit its report to the Prime Minister. So in previous elections, from 2006 to 2015, in those 3 elections, the committee has taken between 2 to 4 months to complete its work. So after the report is submitted to the PM, he will then have to accept it and send it on to Parliament. The next step after that is for the report to be gazetted, and then it will be made public, and that's when your political parties can finalize their plans, for the coming election. And the release of the report is really when your election season kicks into high gear. And the next step after that is for Parliament to be dissolved and for the writ of election to be issued. And after that, there'll be nomination day, and which is really the start of your election campaign. And
right.
It really is a frenzy from then on. It's typically lasted about 9 to 10 days in the past. And next after that is cooling off day, and then finally polling day when Singaporeans head to
D-Day.
vote. That's right.
It's the voting time.
Yeah, that's right.
So with all that in mind, right, when do you personally think we can expect the Singapore general election?
Well, the formation of the committee means that an election is near, but not necessarily imminent.
Okay.
Because if you look at past elections, the kind of gap between when the report is released and when polling day is, it's ranged from as short as 17 days to as long as 6 months. So there's quite a bit of variance there. The political analysts that we've spoken to this round think that 2 windows are more likely than the others. The first is December, because they think that holding an election sooner would give the ruling party an advantage in that the opposition parties would have less time to get ready and prepare. And also the other thing is it might guard against sentiment on the ground worsening in the event that the economy takes a further downturn. Those who think that the April to May window is more likely think so because that is when that will be after the budget. So the government's budget typically takes place sometime in February, and then it breaks for a week, and then they debate the government's budget for 2 weeks, and it usually concludes before the March holidays, just before the March holidays. Right. And the reason they think it's going to be a post-budget election is because the government, from its budget this year, still has $15 billion surplus, and that's funds that could be spent, to address any other lingering concerns that the people might have. And some analysts think, that next year's budget, if it does happen, could well be an election budget.
Right.
And there's also historical precedence to this. In 2006 and in 2011, both elections were held in May. So my own sense is that an election is more likely next year after the budget, because the government still has plans and policies that it has in the works and has yet to roll out. And so if I had to make a bet, I would place it on next year.
Right.
Yeah.
But at this point, we're just speculating.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, right now, all the guesses that we have are mainly educated guesses. It's guesswork, because there's only one person who knows when the election is going to be held, and that's the Prime Minister, because only he has the prerogative to call the election.
So it's neither of us. We're just here to make educated decisions for you.
Right.
So it remains to be seen. And if you'd like to know and keep up to date about how the Singapore general election is going, do head on to our website. That's www.straitstimes.com. Thanks for sharing more with us, Royston.
Thank you, Kimberly.
So if you'd like more news and videos, as we have mentioned earlier, do head on to our website. That's www.straitstimes.com. Otherwise, those were our top stories of the day. Once again, I'm Kimberly Jiao. Thank you for watching The Big Story, and we will see you tomorrow.